Welcome to the World Federation of Young Theosophists group discussion of practical occultism. We'll begin here with 2 minutes of silence. Thank you for that. And what we have here is a couple of quotes that we ended with last time, but I'll reread them now because the following quotes relate directly to this. So it goes 53. Not for himself, but for the world he lives, as soon as he has pledged himself to the work. Much is forgiven during the first years of probation. 54. But no sooner is he accepted than his personality must disappear, and he has to become a mere beneficent force in nature. And 55 and 56 here. I could read these. If you wanted to read them, you could unmute and read them too. It's up to you. Give you 2 seconds to decide. All right. So we have 55. There are 2 poles for him after that, 2 paths, and no midward place of rest. He has either to ascend laboriously, step by step, often through numerous incarnations and no Devachanic break, the golden ladder leading to Mahatmaship, the Arhat, or Bodhisattva condition, or he will let himself slide down the ladder at the first false step and roll down in Duke Bishop. 56. All this is either unknown or left out of sight altogether. Indeed, one who is able to follow the silent evolution of the preliminary aspirations of the candidates often finds strange ideas quietly taking possession of their minds. And I'll pause for a second to reflect and think. Just to reiterate, this is from the perspective of someone who's beginning to gravitate towards occultism and understands a little bit of what it entails. Trying to work without a personality to help the world, essentially. And I think what this is saying is that once someone's begun to move in that direction, you essentially have to go in that direction, because by the age of your soul, you've grown to a point where you can't take that knowledge back, and you know that either you're going to start helping the world or you're going to start helping only yourself. And that's why at the end of 55 here, she says, as soon as he takes a false step, he'll go into the Duke Bishop role, which in Theosophical literature, the Duke is someone who is a relatively old soul. They've gained knowledge, but instead of using it to help the world, they use it for what is called in the TS often black magic, just using powers that most people don't understand for their own selfish gain. And magic in a Theosophic perspective is nothing more than understanding laws of nature that most people don't. There's nothing truly magical about it. It's just how people used to think flying was magic. But if you understand aerodynamics and how a wing moves through the air, it's tied to deeper laws that we didn't used to understand. It's point 56 here. One who is able to follow the silent evolution of the primary aspirations of the candidate often finds strange ideas quietly taking possession of their minds. And I think this is referring to our lowered nature, um, essentially making things up to keep control of our lives. Our personality is it's very intelligent and tricky, and will try and turn a true spiritual aspiration into its own. The rest of the slides talk about that too. So if anyone had anything about these two, I'll speak now, or I'll go to the next two. All right. 57. There are those whose reasoning powers have been so distorted by foreign influences that they imagine that animal passions can be so sublimated and elevated that fury, force, fire, so to speak, can be turned inwards, that they can be stored and shut up in one's breast until their energy is not expanded, but turned toward higher and more holy pursuits, namely, until their collective and unexpanded strength enables their possessor to enter the true sanctuary of the soul and stand there in the presence of the master, the higher self. And this is talking about exactly that, how our personalities can twist and distort our minds into doing things that are selfish, but trick ourselves into believing they're unselfish. That these animal passions that she talks about, fury, force, fire, that instead of purifying them, we can turn them inwards and somehow turn them into spiritual forces. I think this is saying that it's not possible. So she talks more about it. Let's see. 58. For this purpose, they will not struggle with their passions or slay them. They will simply, by a strong effort of will, put down the fierce flames and keep them at bay within their natures, allowing the fire to smolder under a thin layer of ashes. They submit joyfully to the torture of the Spartan boy, who allowed the fox to devour his entrails rather than part with it. Oh, poor blind visionaries. Perhaps at the time in the 19th century when this was written, um, the idea of occultism was new and shiny. HPV was relatively famous at the time, which is different from today when no one really even knows what occultism is, no one at large. So perhaps at that time there were people who, this is all conjecture on my part, but maybe there were people who took HPV's spiritual teachings, tried to put their own spin on them, and their spin involved using these lower animal desires and emotions and turning them towards spiritual aspirations. And I think this is probably her reaction to that by saying it's not possible. Which makes sense, I think, because a lot of the spiritual life is about purifying yourself, seeing these things within us that belong to the animal nature and purifying them by observing them, seeing them for what they are. And by that act of seeing them, it begins to dissipate that energy instead of, like she says, letting it smolder under a thin layer of ashes. I think that's visible probably in a lot of people. I think I've seen this a bit of myself too. People that try to sublimate anger or frustration into getting things done. It works for a while, but eventually it always builds to a point where that anger comes out. And I think this is a little related to that. These animal emotions that we have, we've got to see them for what they are. Can't hide them or turn them into something else. And this one is continuing the same line of thought. 59. As well hope that a band of drunken chimney sweeps, hot and greasy from the work, may be shut up in a sanctuary hung with pure white linen, and that instead of soiling and turning it by their presence into a heap of dirty shreds, they will become masters in and of the sacred recesses, and finally emerge from it as immaculate as that recess. Why not imagine that a dozen skunks imprisoned in pure atmosphere of a dung pot, a monastery, can issue out of it unimpregnated with all the perfumes of the incense used. Can issue out of it impregnated with all the perfumes of the incense used. Strange aberration of the human mind. Can it be so? Let us argue. And this is more of the same, but I put it in here to show how much HPB harps on this issue. That only by purifying the emotions can we go the spiritual path. She uses a lot of metaphors to say we can't. '60. The master in the sanctuary of our souls is the higher self, the divine spirit whose consciousness is based upon and derived solely, at any rate during the mortal life of the man in whom is captive, from the mind, which we've agreed to call the human soul, the spiritual soul, being the vehicle of the spirit. 61. In its turn, the former of the personal or human soul is a compound. In its higher form, in its highest form, the spiritual aspirations, volitions, and divine love. And in its lower aspects, of animal desires and terrestrial passions imparted to it by its associations with its vehicle, the seed of all these. So let me reread this and try and reflect on that a bit. So I think she's just talking here about the higher and lower aspects of a human being. It was almost Theosophy 101, but she thought it well to mention it here. I have 62 here. 62. It thus stands as a link and a medium between the animal nature of man, which its higher reason seeks to subdue, and his divine spiritual nature to which it gravitates, whenever it has the upper hand in the struggle with the inner animal. The latter is the instinctual animal soul and is the hotbed of those passions which, as just shown, are lulled instead of being killed and locked up in the breasts by some imprudent enthusiasts. Do they hope to turn thereby the muddy stream of the animal sewer into the crystalline waters of life? And where, on what neutral ground, can they be imprisoned so as to not affect man? The fierce passions of love and lust are still alive, and they are allowed to still remain in the place of their birth, that same animal soul. For both the higher and the lower portions of the human soul or mind reject such inmates, though they cannot avoid being tainted with them as neighbors. The higher self or spirit is as unable to assimilate such feelings as water to get mixed with oil or unclean liquid tallow. So again, she's kind of breaking down the same point that the lower nature within us, these desires and emotions that we share with animals. I mean, if we watch a dog, we can see the dog get jealous, angry, all these different things. We share that with them. And all of these emotions that we share with animals, they've got to be purified to the point where they don't affect us if we are going to tread the path of serious spiritual development with the aim of helping the world around us. And I think this is important because only in that way, by purifying these emotions to help the world, can we become something that can truly help the world infallibly, invisibly, in such a way that can't be done anyway, any other way. I mean, if you think about the idea of the masters, these evolved beings who, if you compare, a toddler with an adult, you can see the difference in age there and what a toddler is able to do versus an adult, qualitatively different. And then the difference between the average human adult and a master who is spiritually evolved. It's the same kind of qualitative difference, but infinitely larger. So the things that they are able to do, we can't even comprehend in the same way that that a toddler can't comprehend what an adult is doing when he's, working at his computer or whatever other complicated aspects of adult life we're involved in. And if for the motivation of helping the world around us, we wish to evolve and become like those masters, helping in ways that we can't yet understand, we've got to see and observe these lower emotions in us, recognize them for what they are, and work to purify them. She's spending a lot of time on this because I think it's the crux of becoming this higher spiritual force. 63. It is thus the mind alone, the sole link and medium between the man of earth and the higher self, that is the only sufferer, and which is in incessant danger of being dragged down by those passions that may be reawakened at any moment and perish in the abyss of matter. And how can it ever attune itself to the divine harmony of the highest principle, when that harmony is destroyed by the mere presence within the sanctuary of preparation of such animal passions? How can harmony prevail and conquer when the soul is stained and distracted with the turmoil of passions and the terrestrial desire of the bodily senses, or given to the astral man? Again, harping again on the same thing that HPB evidently thinks is very important. She is the founder of the Theosophical Society, so if she thinks something is very important, I'm going to pay a lot of attention. And maybe it's useful thought exercise to imagine what our lives would be like without any kind of animal emotion, any kind of lower emotion. A lot of people their whole lives are based on these things. They go to a bar to get drunk and play around with their friends, scream at sports on the wall. These are all animal emotions. If you take the average human, that's natural for them. That's the state of the evolution of their soul. When you try and take those things away, they may just sit there in a stupor. They have nothing to do now. But for someone who's becoming interested in these things by the age of their soul, they're awake enough to realize this is the direction that humanity is headed in due time. And they begin to quiet these emotions, whatever they may be, that most people are obsessed with throughout their lives. And they're left with existence after that. All these other emotions are quiet. They're left with existence. What does that life look like? If I had to guess, by the nature of by the nature of quieting these emotions, I think they begin to see something higher. Something that once they see those other lower emotions that the world at large is so involved with look empty and childish. And the new thing they find in that silence without them is infinitely more beautiful and meaningful. And it probably can't be conveyed with words, can't be convinced. Otherwise, people would have tried to do that already. 64. For this astral, the shadowy double, is the animal, in the animal as in man, is not the companion of the divine ego, but of the earthly body. It is the link between the person of self, the lower consciousness of manas, and the body, and is the vehicle of transitory, not of immortal life. 65. Like the shadow projected by man, it follows his movements and impulses slavishly and mechanically, and leans therefore to matter without ever ascending to spirit. It is only when the power of the passions is dead altogether, and when they have been crushed and annihilated in the retort of an unflinching will, when not only all the lusts and longings of the flesh are dead, but also the recognition of the personal self is killed out, and the astral has been reduced in consequence to a cipher that the union with the higher self can take place. Again, more fleshing out in details of the exact same theme that HPB is putting so much emphasis on. She calls the astral, which is our emotions, our emotional body, the animal in man. She says that our emotions, this animal in us, is not the companion of the divine ego, which is what we really are, our soul, that thing that's always observing, never really observed. She says those emotions are of the earthly body. Disappears when we die. Transitory and empty. And yet again, so much of the world is completely involved in these emotions. And yet she's saying that you've got to get rid of them, or at least recognize them for what they are. Not the end of life, but just, she says at the bottom here, a cipher. Yeah, at the end of 65, the astral has been reduced in consequence to a cipher, which I think in this context means something to be interpreted to kind of deduce, feel out the direction that we're supposed to go. Because there's that idea, right, that the emotional nature does reflect the Buddhic nature. The sevenfold constitution of man. We have roughly the physical body, above that the emotions, above that the lower mind, above that the higher mind, above that the Buddhic body, above that the atmic. And the top and bottom corresponds, the middle correspond. I may not be explaining that very well. But the idea is, so take for instance the higher and the lower minds. The higher mind, seeing patterns in the world around us, is able to most easily influence, the lower mind, which is the concrete mind of us that sees things with our senses. And then if you go above and below by one step in either direction, you have the Buddhic above, which is the source of unselfish love and you know, a lot of spiritual sentiment and feelings. And then on the opposite side, but equal in the personality, you have the emotions. So I think she's saying through this that our emotions can be gateways to the Buddhic nature as we learn to see that reflection. Welcome, Eric K. I'll give you a second to read this on your own if you want, before we go to the next slide, in case you had any thoughts about it. Give you a minute or so if you want. I'll go ahead to the next, unless you want me to wait. And just a heads up, it looks like your camera's not working. I'm not sure if that's how you want to. 66 and 67. Again, you could read them if you wanted to. If not, I'll go ahead and read them. 66. Then when the astral reflects only the conquered man, the still living, but no more the longing, selfish personality. Then the brilliant agitos, the divine self, can vibrate in conscious harmony with both the poles of the human entity, the man of matter purified, and the ever pure spiritual soul, and stand in the presence of Master Self. The Christus of the mystic Gnostic, blended, merged into, and one with it forever. 67. How then can it be thought possible for a man to enter the straight gate of occultism when his daily and hourly thoughts are bound up with worldly things, desires of possession and power, with lust, ambition, and duties which, however honorable, are still of the earthly life? And this seems to be touching upon the end result after someone has conquered the personality, when all these emotions that go up and down, vibrating with the, the rest of humanity, because that's the stage that most of us are at. And that's been conquered, and it's a blank slate. Uh, it looks like she's saying that it becomes now the proving ground of something higher, can be influencing, can be influenced by the Buddhic nature of it, most likely. She's saying, which is probably obvious, but that we can't enter the path of occultism if in our daily thoughts we have any touch of worldly things, desires of possession and power, lust, ambition. Our entire life's got to leave that behind, and it can't even take up a fraction of our time. Welcome, welcome back, Merkin. See you now. Again, I'll give you a second here in case you wanted to say anything. So I'll go to the next. Right? Stop me, make me go back if you like. Did you want to read these two? No worries if not, I can read them, but give you the chance. Right? 68. Even the love for wife and family, purest as the most unselfish of human affections, is a barrier to real occultism. For whether we take as an example the holy love of a mother for her child, or that of a husband for his wife, even in these feelings, when analyzed to the very bottom, thoroughly sifted, there is still selfishness in the first, and an egoism a duo in the second instance. 69. And yet, he who would profit by the wisdom of the universal mind has to reach it through the whole of humanity without distinction of race, complexion, religion, or social status. It is altruism, not egoism, even in the most legal and noble conception, that can lead the unit to merge its little self in the universal selves. It is to these needs and to this work that the true disciple of true occultism has to devote himself if he would obtain theosophy, divine wisdom and knowledge. She's kind of on the extreme here in saying that even unselfish human affections, such as the love for your family, can hinder someone from going in the path of occultism. And I think that her motivation for saying that is probably just the selfishness inherent in this is my family, not yours, and the things our ego does to protect that. Because I know, for instance, HPV herself was married, I think, twice, and yet she's evidently was an occultist. So probably it's tied to the emotions underlying these relationships, whether or not it hinders.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just I just think that but everybody has a family. Even a person who is occultist has a family. So it's not about having or not having a family. It's more about the attitude, because I think some of the biggest teachers uh, who I think was very close to be like real theosophist had like close relations with the family. I mean, like Krishnamurti very much loved his brother, I've heard, and I think Blavatsky has a really close relationship with his sister, niece, or yeah, somebody. So I think it is not, and like Annie Besant very much loved her children, but she had to give up in certain period of her time for. But I mean, it's not that you can't have a family, but if life puts you in a situation where you have to choose family and something like a bigger calling, then you have to be ready to choose the bigger calling and not your family. I think this is like one aspect. Yeah.
I agree.
Because everybody has a family. Like we wouldn't be a human being if we would at least don't have a parents and grandparents and so on. And it's not about not loving them, but also be able to love. I don't know if it's just the same way, but in a similar way, every new person who is like walking towards you or who you meet your life, that you don't have to call them like mom or dad, but the attitude or the respect, or I think this is like if something happens to somebody in front of you, you are able to go and help them without like thinking, but oh, those are not my family or so. Like in that sense, we are all like one family.
Yeah, yeah. It reminds me of something Annie Besant would say that most of these people around us, we have interactions with them because we've had interactions with them in past lives. You know, if even if you meet someone random on the street, if you two stop and have an interaction, it probably stems from something that's happened in the past. And I don't know, at least for me, that can make these random, seemingly insignificant interactions have more meaning, that there's things underlying them that I don't understand, and that it's not all random.
I think so too, because it might be their karma to have this experience, but it is my karma that I am witnessing and I happen to be right there at that time, and maybe I have the possibility to help. And sometimes I don't know exactly how to help, but it's just being there and been ready to help. Maybe they are already able to then figure out, but they just sometimes it is enough to have the feeling that somebody is on your back and you can do it. And
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, that's kind of what the masters are doing, right? They're not really directly helping any of us, as far as I know. But we know their presence is there, and that spiritual presence uplifts the entire world in a way that, with all of our actions, we could never do. And maybe by some small reflection of that, just by, like you said, existing with people, knowing that we're there for them, maybe that is more helpful than anything we can actually do.
yes, I read, let me see, I think it was Annie Besant. I read just a glimpse of the book, guys. Yoga. I don't remember what was it, but Annie Besant wrote some commentaries about yoga, and the book was on the table, so I just opened it random place and read, and I very much like um, what he told there. Mm, yeah, sorry, I lost it. Uh, maybe it comes back. Mm.
That's how it goes.
But it was also something about the karma. Yes, yes. Sorry.
Go to the next slide here, unless you want to go back. Did you want to read this one there, Kay? Did you want me to?
I can try.
If you're on your
The
phone, it might be hard.
aspirant
Okay.
yes, I'm on my phone. You can read it maybe
Okay.
this time.
Yeah. I did words down to be small on the phone here. So 70. The aspirant has to
Extra
choose
small.
absolutely between the life of the world and the life of occultism. It is useless and vain to endeavor to unite the two, for no one can serve two masters and satisfy both. No one can serve his body and the higher self, and do his family duty and his universal duty without depriving either one or the other of its rights. He will either lend his ear to the still small voice and fail to hear the cries of his little ones, or he will listen to the wants of the latter and remain deaf to the voice of humanity. And I think that she personified Annie Besant's life to, to
Yes.
bring back something we were just talking about. It's almost like she predicted it, which I don't know if anyone listens to this later and doesn't know Annie Besant's life. Uh, she did a lot of work for the Theosophical Society and as a result of that, lost custody of her children. Uh, had to battle severe depression, I think. Um, a lot of a lot of very hard things she went through just to help the world, and very much
Yeah,
sacrificed her family for
and in
the world.
in Indian independence, he was like a big figure fighting for the Indians have their own independence. She's like very much known here in India.
And known at the time as the best
Right.
speaker in the world. A very impressive woman. This also reminds me of something that I read in her book, The Ancient Wisdom, recently, where something along the lines of working with karma in and occultism, or is wherein she said that seemingly advanced occultists could do things that look absolutely crazy to the outside world. For instance, HPV getting married to that man in the United States, which seemed completely out of her, you know, circle. The man wasn't, you know, known for being spiritual or anything, but she married him, and everyone around her was like, "What are you doing?" And Annie Besant said in this book that sometimes occultists will do things like that. She didn't mention this example. She said they'll do things like that as a way of working with karma in the past that they've generated, and because they have knowledge of what has happened in the past and how to alleviate these results, sometimes they do things that to the outside seem crazy, but on a deeper level are helpful in some way. And I don't know, something about this 70 here made me think of that. Because even when it appears that someone's trying to unite the two, such as HPP herself getting married to that man, she may have had deeper motives, deeper perspective than we're able to understand. But we have to be
Mhm.
careful because that could also be just a cop out for uh, false spiritual teachers to do anything and say you don't understand it, when in reality they're just being selfish. So as with anything, it takes discernment.
The thing that is come to my mind is Blavatsky. Name Blavatsky came from that marriage, and she never changed that. And if she would not have marriage, we would know her like by another name. Uh, but this is the name that became famous, like, and every name also, uh, like the same name is a spell that protects you. I don't think she did it because of the name, uh, but nevertheless, yeah,
Yeah,
they say that if a woman marries, her destiny changes because if you change your name, then the name holds something of your energy. And if you change your name without knowing, then you don't know if it's going to be better or more difficult or what kind of change. So it will be wise before like marrying, thinking through what options are there to take the other name, to keep the both names, or to have some other combinations. Like what is the best that goes and with your name. I don't think that actually that Blavatsky was thinking about that when she married. I probably you are right. There's some other reasons, but when I was thinking about her marrying, then I just was thinking that she never changed the name.
yeah. And she was kind of forced into that first marriage. She didn't want to do that, but she was a kid, and she changed her name. And yeah, that affects what we're reading now. Her name, HPV, is at the top. And then she got married again. It's lesser known, but she had a second marriage in the United States to a man who then wanted her to be like a housewife. So she divorced him pretty soon after that. And that's one of those things that just seems like, why are you doing this, you know? But she was very well along the path of occultism at that point, and maybe she had some kind of underlying reason for that that we didn't understand, or maybe not.
Wow, yes. I also like this what at the feet of the Master Krishnamurti said, that sometimes you don't have to like understand or not have to, but um, it's enough that this person's higher self understands what is needed for that person. And I think recently read something like that. For your point of view, this is totally crazy what this person is doing. And for you, in your perspective, it's a wrong action. But for their perspective, maybe this is the last drop they needed to erase a certain karma or learn certain things. And after that, they are free. This is the last part of the mistake they have to, I don't know, go through. And even if you see, oh, this is kind of failure, this I can't see it goes in a good direction. But maybe for that person, that soul, this is like he or she really needs that experience, and then afterwards it's easier.
Yeah, agree. We never know the
And
underlying.
yes, and being married again, I remember one of my friends said, I don't know if she was joking or not, but she said she had at the work somebody who was really irritating, and she really tried that she will not like how to say, not to scream, but to not like a fight back or go in a quarrel, because she said otherwise in the next life we'll be married. And I'm often thinking, because we are marrying with people, I mean, we are having a family with people with whom we have the most karma, and with whom we have the most to to learn, and to the biggest lessons, like um, and this was like interesting, because before that I was always thinking like marriage is something out of love, and of course there's different kinds of marriages, uh, but in karmic point of view, everything happens for a reason, and you have the most learn in this situation, in this relationship, uh, in a best kind of way. And if the experience will be like we once read, that if it will be a little bit easier, we will not get the full benefit of it.
Yeah, she might have been joking, but it also might be
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
71 here. Whoever indulges after having pledged himself to occultism in the gratification of a terrestrial love or lust must feel an almost immediate result. That of being irresistibly dragged from the impersonal divine state down to the lower plane of matter. Sensual, or even mental, self gratification involves the immediate loss of the powers of spiritual discernment. The voice of the master can no longer be distinguished from that of one's passions, or even that of a dupa, the right from wrong, sound morality for mere casuistry.
Wow, this is like a really bad situation if you cannot make difference if it's master or tukva.
Yeah, no, it is. But at the same time, I think that's probably the normal state of most people. Uh, because most people in the world at large, this is just the state of their souls. It's natural. But
Yeah.
gratification of their love and lusts is what they live for. That's where we're at in humanity. And if we're similar in any way to most of these people around us, we, same as them, are not going to be able to discern between the master and the dupa.
I have just a thought. Once one of my Finnish teachers says, it was asked, how do I know if I have a thought? How do I know this thought comes from my higher self and not like my lower self or somewhere else? Like if I have an idea, and he says, if this idea or thought is in this direction to help like a larger portion of people or like a community or the world, then it's probably higher self. But it is if it's something that would help me like give some personal gain, then it's probably from the lower self.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. It could also be good motivation to not go towards your own personal gratification in any way, because by doing that we lose perception of what is right. And if we can remember that before, whatever that urge or desire is, maybe that in and of itself could be strong enough to keep us from going down that path. As we evolve, our souls get older and we learn right from wrong.
I'm just thinking, is there no way? Because like Buddha had a family, and some other very high teachers also have had families, and I'm like thinking, is there no other path, or is it like just they want to show how dangerous it is that you will be fully aware that it is so much harder if you have such a close relationship while you're like going all in for the occultism also.
You mean from the last slide with having like a personal family being incompatible with
Yes,
occultism?
yes. And also this one, sensual or evil mental self-gratification involves the immediate loss of the powers of spiritual discernment. I mean, is it like 100% sure that you lose spiritual discernment? I mean,
I think
I mean,
so.
it's probably yes, but
I don't know. So the way that I see it is sometimes at the best moments of my life, I can perhaps feel a little bit, uh, a spiritual inclination within me. This silent perception of everything is exactly how it's supposed to be, a little bit. But I've noticed in myself, if I go off the rails at all, that is gone completely. I do not feel that whatsoever. And maybe in a much, much lower degree, that's the same thing that she's talking about here. I do think it is immediate loss of discernment when we start going the direction of personal self, because those
mhm,
energies are completely incompatible with the higher life.
mhm. But I'm just thinking, like logically. Um, I mean, we have to be born, and we, how to say, the Buddhas and good teachers have to be also born in some kind of a family, and I mean, even in the families, relationships, aren't it like a specter? Like you could have a certain relationship where people are more in this universal love or on this unconditional love, and some other who are more like a little bit selfish love, or yeah, how to call it better. I mean, I'm thinking about the next race, or they say that in the future races, in far future, humans do not need any more sexual production, and they do not need any more physical bodies. But before that, they must so much purify. And I mean, it means also the relationship of the families must be purified so much that we do not need them anymore. Because if you don't have the physical bodies from the parents anymore, then the only parent we have is ourselves of our past lives.
Yeah, I mean, our physical bodies now exist just so that we can be involved with matter, right?
Mhm.
And that from this being thrown in the world of matter, uh, our soul gains the experience it needs to be self-conscious, to be self-aware. And once our soul has developed that, the physical bodies, they've served their purpose. They're just stepping stones.
Yeah, except for bodhisattvas who are coming back to help all the others to reach the same state, the same understanding. But I still think overall, those love relationship and family relationship, they, I mean, they should also like purify. Like if the humanity is going that directions very slowly, that in this towards the spirituality out of the matter, then also those relationships should be purified. And I'm
Yeah,
just thinking if
yeah,
those
no,
are
I think
purifying,
that sounds like it makes sense.
then maybe it's possible to have. Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, in HPB, she writes and speaks in such a way to get emotional reactions out of people. I think that's what she lives for. But I don't think she meant, truly that someone on the path to occultism has to disown their family. I think all of this evolves in time.
Yeah, it is the same that unattachment, that it doesn't mean that you cannot be rich, but it's like if the circumstances need, you're able to discard it all. And like Olcott, like I understand he was like a colonel and she was doing a lot of work in America and for the agriculture and everything. And then he came, and I think masters wrote how he was sleeping like in a very pure conditions and didn't have the food, but he was doing the work and he was like so like ready to sacrifice so much and get criticized and still going on. And I think this is the kind of attitude that is like needed, that uh, the readiness of do it. I don't think he all his life he lived like that, but like he was ready to do when he saw that there was and also Annie Besant and Blavatsky also, if they saw something that was needed to do, they were like ready. Like Blavatsky, I think she was coming, I don't know, England to America, and there was this poor family of wife and child, and they have lost the money to go uh, to the ticket to go to America for their husband and father of child, because that he has sent because somebody who's crooked them or something. And Blavatsky take his first class ticket because she didn't have too much money with her, and she changed it to 3, like the, I don't know, lesser class tickets. And she was like a very sensitive one, so it was really hard for her to this, I don't know, couple of weeks or months, how long it takes to that time to the ship to go to one continent to the other. And but that was like she just did it because it was needed to be done. And wow.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's the dream. If we have developed within us spiritual discernment to a point where it can tell us in any given situation exactly what we're supposed to do, and we just do it. That's the dream. Um, I think life gets a lot easier after that. You know, I think a lot of the struggle of humanity is as we evolve, not knowing what exactly it is we're supposed to do. But I think a part of the joy once we get to that higher nature is that the next step is always there. And until we're pure enough to have that discernment, we can't see the next step. So we might, you know, throw everything down and try and go do something, but it could be you're supposed to be doing something else. I think it all depends on that spiritual discernment first.
I have been thinking about this. Maybe we should have been doing something else. I so much like that the karma puts us in a situation where we like grow at the most, or where we have the most to learn and do something else. I mean, I recently read about this Hodson, and he said very nicely about the what is the spiritual maturity. He said is defined spiritual maturity as the time it takes for one person to notice that they have a like a mistake in their characteristics, and how long it takes them to remove it. So uh, if I noticed I should be doing something else, how long it will take me to do the things that I feel now I'm doing the right thing that I should be doing. Like if I had the feeling, will I let it? Oh yeah. Like I could be doing something better, but you don't trouble even thinking like what would be the better. I just other thing that they come to my mind when Gandhi was in the train and one of his shoes fell off, sandals, or, and then she took the other one and threw it also because she said, "What I'm going to do with one shoe, but the other one, somebody is finding the other one, and what they will do with the one shoe. Like, let's one of us have the both." And this is like such a beautiful like thought or action. Like, will I be able in this kind of situation do the same thing? Now that I have heard what he did, I think it is like a little bit easier, but it depends if it's like very, yeah, it depends probably a lot of things, but
Yeah, I feel like you'd get a fine for littering.
yes, yeah,
Yeah, I agree. It depends on
yeah,
a lot of things. Like life, existence, all of this, infinitely complex.
but yeah, feel that I'm not doing the right thing. I had that for a long time, and I am so glad it took me years I was planning and thinking what I would like to do. And now I feel like maybe I'm a little bit closer, but let's see. Maybe one day I look back over my life and I see things more clearly. But right now I feel like I'm a little bit closer to doing what I'm supposed to do than some times ago. But I am here because I was in this other situation where I felt that this is not right and now I should do something else. If I would not have feel also maybe if you have a bad relationship or you at least learn like this is the thing I want to avoid or this is the thing I would not like to react or you learn something out of it and then you know how to make the next one more better. Yeah.
It touches on the important point that no one can know what's right for us except for us. Only can make that decision.
I think it's like
Yeah.
about more. Yeah, sorry. The last thing is like, yeah, children, like parents know what is best for them, and a lot of people think what is best for them. But I think this one, the last one that you said, is right for in that sense that what our higher self is like thinking, because my lower self thinks like I could have a fridge full of ice cream at one meal, and this is actually not very good for me. Sorry.
No worries. Thank you for that. All right. It's been just a little bit over an hour, so last 2 minutes of silence here before we go. Thank you for being here, Mary Kay. Hope you have a good week.
Thank you for you too.